And now let's get story-oriented. My next guest has a way with rhyme mixed with a message of hope that has been a recipe for success in the Christian children's book market. His latest, When I Pray For You, is out in stores now. He joined me recently to talk about his writing, the power of prayer, and the importance of reading to your children about all of the above. Here's my exclusive interview with Matthew Paul Turner. Matthew, you've written about 20 books, most of them for adults. How did you start writing for children, and why?
I started writing for children after my wife and I had our second child. I started reading to them books, and anytime we would get to children's books about God, my kids would start to get a little bored. And so I decided I was going to see if I could write a book that might interest them, or at least hold their interest for a little bit. And so I just sort of took a chance on it, and certainly there were bumps along the way, but I finally was able to land a publishing deal, and it's been really, really awesome.
It's a difficult audience to write for because it is so spare, and you can't use those big 10-cent words. You have to kind of confine your vocabulary. What was the hardest challenge of that transition from writing for adults to writing picture books?
Well, my books are all rhyming, so there was certainly that aspect of it. And, I wanted to create a book that was both inspiring and affirming and just celebrated God's delight in kids. And I wanted it to rhyme because I wanted it to be easy to read for parents at night and, for something to kind of roll off the tongue for people.
And that takes a lot of work. I know. I'm working on a children's book now, a picture book. And
it's crazy how long.
Yeah, much more difficult than it looks. Those chapter books are a lot easier to write, I can tell you. When I Pray For You is the third children's picture book you've written. What's been the response to these books?
It's been absolutely unbelievable. Like My first book was called When God Made You, and I found out, I guess this has been about 6-8 months ago, but it had sold 130,000 copies, which was, more books than I've ever sold in my life. And so it's been a real positive thing, and lots of stores have picked it up. But I think the best part has been just getting the feedback from people and the letters from readers and parents, and telling me that that this is one of the first books they've read to their kids about God that they really enjoy, and so it's been a real positive thing. So
I want to read a little portion of this. I love this. In the middle of the book, it reads, "I'll pray you choose hope should you ever face fear, and seek wisdom with patience when the pathway's unclear, that you will love others, whether strangers or friends, with the same kind of love that God feels for them." Give me a sense of how praying for your kids affected you and shaped your work.
Well, after you have kids, you realize that there's very few things in life that change your prayer life more than becoming a parent. You find yourself whispering and just whispering prayers and thinking prayers and saying prayers over them all the time, and watching them get out of the car and go to school, and as you're holding them and rocking them to sleep at night, I found myself just prayer being such an integral part of how I parented, and sometimes prayers are sighs, and sometimes prayers are hopes, and sometimes they're actual, prayers of protection. And so I just wanted to write a book that really gave parents words for expressing what that love and what that love for prayer means to them.
You've talked about the benefits of reading to children and how reading can spark conversations, which is very central to what we do here. How have you found reading to your kids helped them? Has it enriched your relationship with them?
Absolutely, because it brings up so many interesting things, whether it's about science or about the Bible or about what we believe as a family and how we are to love other people, whether we agree with them or not. And I think that it's those moments when you are tucked in under the covers with them, and they're getting ready to go to sleep, or you're hoping they're going to go to sleep. And so, but it's kind of, when you read a book, it sparks a conversation about so many different topics, and it helps you. And books also give you words to talk to your kids about difficult topics. So I mean, I think that I have found books to be really helpful in engaging my kids.
Yeah. You
Absolutely.
grew up in a fundamentalist evangelical Christian church. I mean, you've written about that experience in a 2008 book. Give me a sense of how your departure from fundamentalism changed you and changed your work.
Well, I had Barbies burned in front of me to explain hell. That's the kind of fundamentalism that I grew up in. It was pretty out there. And so, walking away from fundamentalism certainly was it was odd, because every step away from what I grew up in created some sort of drama with my family, or some sort of drama with a friend. And so it was hard at first, and took a lot of took some counseling, to get through it. And so I think that for me, it's really given me and empowered me to introduce my kids to God in a way that is filled with hope, and without fear, and really focusing on God's love for them, and making sure they know all the things that I didn't hear very often as a kid.
In addition to writing children's books for the past decade, you've traveled the world as a photographer and a journalist with World Vision, documenting the effects of poverty and their humanitarian efforts. What impact has that had on you? And has that filtered down to the writing of these books, particularly these picture books?
Absolutely. My work with World Vision is some of the most precious stuff that I've ever had the honor of doing. Anytime you get up close to poverty, or you see a face in need, it changes you, and it affects you in a deep way. And so as a photographer, my job is to see the people.
Right.
And it's an honor to be able to go to countries around the world and tell their stories, because I feel like so many people who aren't able to tell their stories, I have been given the privilege and the honor to share with my friends and my family and the people who read my books, getting them to hear their story for the first time in many ways. And so it has profoundly affected me, and it has affected my parenting, and certainly there is the light and the hope that my books include certainly would have been affected by my experiences overseas.
Now, when I first interviewed Mother Teresa, she said, "Come to Calcutta." And I said, "Well, why?" She said, "Because of the poverty. You'll see Jesus there." And I think she's right. I mean, I've seen it all over the world. And
yeah, absolutely.
She's right. Now,
absolutely.
You have another children's book coming out in 2020, When God Made the World. How many more children's books do you plan to write?
I do. Well, so far I'm contracted for 2 more after that, so a total of 6. So we'll see if people keep being interested in them, and whether or not I can keep my publishing deal. So we'll see.
Well, okay. There are questions I ask every author who comes on the show. My story-oriented questions.
Okay.
Here I go. Favorite children's book and why?
I love Where the Wild Things Are. I think it is it sparks imagination, and it's about a little boy who, goes into the forest, and and honestly, it's a naughty little boy who kind of sasses his mom. But it's this, it is a brilliant way of getting a kid to fall asleep, and I read it to my kid last night, so I love it.
What's your least favorite book?
My least favorite children's book?
Yes.
Oh man.
Doesn't have to be a children's book. It can be a least favorite book.
Oh gosh, that's not fair. I probably something something I read in college that I had to read.
You see, I always go right to James Joyce. It's easier. Okay, the story that helped you find your path and the one life lesson that you remember from it, what would that be?
Wow, good question. I would say that I keep going back to the influence my grandmother had on me. She would read to me before I would go to sleep, and every night. She lived with us for most of my life. And my grandmother was amid my experience in fundamentalism, my grandmother was a light in my life, and there was kindness about her, there was humility, and they were qualities of Jesus that I got to see in her that I rarely saw in my church. And so certainly my hope is that her story has affected me.
Where do you write and why?
I write the children's books. I have written most of them in the parking lot of a grocery store.
Wow.
I have found that there is something about walking and writing for me. I use my cell phone or use my iPhone, and there's something about engaging activity as I am creating rhyme and creating these words. And I have. I'm sure I look pretty ridiculous to people out staring at me, because I'm often like reading these things out loud. But I have found that there's something about being outside and seeing other people and being in a place that lots of people go to. There's just something about it that I am able to connect with other people, but that also just to connect with the words and the messages that I want to give to kids.
No, Matthew, I understand that. I write part of my books in coffee shops, and there are multiple characters, there are subplots, and when I do my editing, I'll do all the voices as I do it. People think I'm out of my mind sitting in the corner of the coffee shop. But there are studies that the hum of conversation that you can't exactly hear, but's there, it triggers a certain frequency in the brain that does promote creativity. So there may be method to our madness.
Oh, I believe that. Yeah.
Where do the best ideas come from for you?
My kids. When I see a need or hear them ask a question, it sparks creativity and it sparks ideas, and certainly gets me thinking about what messages I want them to know, what I want them to hear over and over again, because I think that's been the coolest thing about writing children's books. I had no idea the impact that children's books had in people's lives. I mean, I certainly knew that I loved them and I enjoyed them, but I didn't realize to what degree people were affected by them. And so anytime my kids and I are having a really engaging conversation about ridiculous things or sometimes really important things, it helps me see things in a different way and inspires me to jot ideas down on paper.
If you could pick a writing mentor, dead or alive, who would it be?
I would say C.S. Lewis. Probably because of his ability to not only write theology, but he had this massive ability to, engage his imagination. And I just find that fascinating, because I think that so often the leaders and writers today, they don't walk that line. And I just love that his ability to walk that line so gracefully.
Your advice to parents who want to get their children to read, what would you tell them?
Oh, read to them. I mean, that's number one would be start early. Read to your kids before they even understand what you're saying. Get them to fall in love with the pictures and the colors of books. It's so important to engage them with new words and new ideas and new sights. And so books are invaluable, but it all starts with us reading to them.
If you could write anything else, what would it be?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I think that I have really enjoyed, I'm in the process of finishing up writing a Christmas book for children, and I was very skeptical about the idea of writing a Christmas book, because I don't know, it just felt a little overwhelming. But it has been so fun to kind of engage the spirit of Christmas and come up with new ways of talking about things that we have all talked about hundreds and hundreds of times. And so I would say that I have fallen in love with the idea of writing a Christmas book for kids. So,
Game of Thrones author George Martin says authors are either architects or gardeners. Which are you?
I'm a gardener.
You're a gardener.
I really
Go out there and feel your way through it.
Well, yeah, and also I love the idea of watching things grow and, you know, planting a seed and seeing, you know, things come to life. And so that's, I mean, I hope that, you know, the words I give parents to read to their kids are like seeds and that they are, you know, things that might grow.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you for the time. The book is When I Pray For You.
Thank you so very much.
It's a splendid, beautiful little picture book.
Oh,
and
thank you.
It captures the various dimensions of praying for your children, praying with them, and your hopes and dreams for them. I love it. Thank you so much, Matthew.
Thank you so much for having me.
When I Pray For You by Matthew Paul Turner is available in stores everywhere and online.